So I helped grow and scale this travel tech company. Actually, that's where I met my husband. And, in 5 years, we grew. I started with them, it was like 10, 12 million or something like that. And, in 5 years, we were able to grow it to 120 million. And then well on its way to 150 million. So we exited on a pretty good high.
When you said 120 million or 150 million, you're talking about annual revenue in Australian dollars.
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
While the world's still asleep, we're already grinding. Walking foreign streets, big city lights so blinding. Learning and hustling in this relentless game. The Emerge Pod's next up, we're breaking the frame.
Hi, welcome to episode 14 of the Emerge podcast, where we break down emerging markets and give you actionable insights on how to start and grow your business in them. For today's episode, Lauri and I sat down with Joana Button, who is an entrepreneur from Australia. Now, Joana's achievements are second to none. She is a startup consultant and angel investor, and she's also a director for the Thai-Australian Chamber of Commerce. We spoke to her about how she took her travel tech startup from Australia to Thailand and then to an impressive $150 million valuation. Her perspective on working with people in Thailand was especially insightful. If you're thinking about starting a business in Thailand, you definitely need to check this out.
Okay, so you moved straight from Australia to Thailand?
Yeah, we used to. We had a travel business here. We used to come here all the time, for months on end. And then we just had an opportunity here in the Asia, in here, and then we just thought, we'll go for 2 years and see how it went. And then COVID hit, and we got stuck. And then so we just decided, let's just stay. I actually really enjoyed it. I actually gave my husband 2 years, and I just said, I want to go back. I don't see myself living in Asia, Europe maybe, but definitely not Asia. And then I just fell in love with it. Even though COVID hit, I just saw all of the issues that other countries were facing, and I just really fell in love with Thailand.
I think 2020 was like a pivotal moment for a lot of foreigners in Asia. Like, am I gonna stay here for a long time, or am I going back home? So
yeah, where are you guys like based in Asia? Where are you guys based?
I used to be based in Jakarta, so in Indonesia. And then when 2020 hit, I was like, okay, I've been here for 10 years. I wanted to change something, like explore some new places perhaps. And then I ended up going back home. so yeah, that's a bit of my story.
But the travel ban was kind of harsh on Australia, though. I remember that, they were like pretty bad in stopping people from entering and exiting.
Yeah, it was incredibly brutal is probably the word. It's, that's why I fell in love with Thailand and Asia. I've always sort of lived in Europe and Australia and the Western world, but I mean, not really Asia. Although I may look Asian. But yeah, I just saw just the differences between how Australia navigated through the challenges of COVID and Asia. And, Thailand, and I've got this here, I think, in the notes, that they had QR codes and delivery drivers. I mean, obviously the cost in terms of the entry point of a base salary is much cheaper here, so you can afford to have delivery drivers and things like that. But they just had QR codes everywhere. They just made it very seamless and easy when COVID hit. And it really affected me because we invest in a lot of technology companies, and blockchain and things like that. And for me, I was really impressed by how innovative they were, how agile, how completely open they were to change, as opposed to some of those in the Western world who are supposedly so far ahead in terms of innovation and technology. So I was really impressed by the way that Thailand handled that period.
You told us before that you were actually not new to Thailand in a sense that you had a travel business. So was that travel business about like sending Australians to Thailand for vacations, or what was it doing?
It was a travel technology company. So I helped grow and scale this travel tech company. Actually, that's where I met my husband. And, in 5 years, we grew. I started with them, it was like 10, 12 million or something like that. And, in 5 years, we were able to grow it to 120 million. And then well on its way to 150 million. So we exited on a pretty good high. 2 years after we'd left, it kind of went crashing down, and we were actually about to sell it to a big travel company. And but 2 years after I left, because I had a baby, it went down, and I was like, one of those opportunities that you go, you missed out, but that's how I kind of was, my role was really to go into different countries, expand to different countries, look at different markets, and with technology, we could pretty much, the world's your oyster. You can pick and choose which markets you wanted to enter into.
When you said 120 million or 150 million, you're talking about annual revenue in Australian dollars.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
So what happened? You said the numbers went down.
What happened? Well, I'm a big believer in really good financial management, really good people and culture strategies, and looking after your customers. I mean, I have 2 pillars. You look after your customers and you look after your people. And if you get those pillars correct, you'll have a very, very good business model. I find that a lot of business owners and businesses in general, they put a lot of emphasis on the customer, but not a lot of emphasis on the internal customer and their people. Maybe it's the technology or the systems, or they have manual processes and it's labor intensive. It's, I like to automate things. I like to kind of challenge the status quo and the thinking, and and I'm that type of person, where I'm quite inquisitive, and I'll ask why do we do that? Like, what is your reason for doing that? And I'm a pain in the ass, but it's important to ask questions, and it's important to be inquisitive and look at all the various perspectives in business, because that's how you get a solid understanding of what works and what makes the cogs of the wheel work. If you understand the customers, if you understand your people, if you understand the business processes, if you understand the technology stack that you're using, it all, and even, for example, external market, when you're entering into a place like Thailand, like, what are the challenges, and going with your eyes wide open, not saying it's going to be perfect, but certainly going in with your eyes wide open, you have a true understanding of the landscape that you're about to enter into, and then you can make good, better, more informed decisions, and that comes down to data and having all of the perspectives before you.
All right, so this is a podcast that is listened to by various types of entrepreneurs that are like people just owning their backpack and planning to move to South Asia as a digital nomad, and we have like large companies planning to open their like 67th branch in Thailand. So we try to offer something for everyone, but you already got started with the processes and automation and everything. So your travel tech company, a very impressive travel tech company. So I'm assuming you had to have pretty good processes in place. Like, give us some specifics, like something that you think that it worked really well, and then and did it have anything specific about Thailand that perhaps is different from what you experienced in Australia?
Well, the company was based in Australia, first and foremost. It was a startup in Australia. I mean, I've got 20 plus years experience in HR, people culture, global operations, strategy, that kind of stuff. So in terms of processes, and as a startup, there are many iterations or mistakes, and we're continuously looking at those mistakes and being agile and being first to market and just not pretending that it was perfect. And I think a lot of business owners, and myself included in that, particularly as a woman, we have this notion of perfection or it being perfect, and nothing in life is perfect, and no product is perfect, no company or employee is perfect, no customer is perfect. So I think if you kind of accept that and you don't get stuck in this state of perfectionism like I used to, That's certainly how you can grow and scale quite rapidly. It's iteration.
Okay, so let me jump in. So it sounds like your desire for perfection did cause some problems. So maybe you can give us some examples of like of how being too perfect can be a bad thing.
Okay. Look. So, for example, in the travel company, I was looking after the global operations. I was heading and in charge of global expansion efforts. One of my big projects was implementing customer experience team or the global operations in each of these markets. So Thailand, Athens, we had a UK, London branch, and then we had somewhere in America. So we kind of went through that process, and we started off with Bangkok and Thailand, and then we went to Athens, and what we tried to do was a 24/7 call center. And in terms of perfection, I think for me in the beginning, I was expecting everything to have our processes mapped out, SOPs, making sure that all of the tick boxes had been checked. Certainly from a technology perspective, implementing a system, I think we used at the time for our call center, Zendesk, whereas I wanted it to be in our back office platform, the same place where our booking platform was created, our own IP. And to do that, you would have to wait years, So it was, I guess you kind of have to balance out what can you get off the shelf, what can you build yourself until we get to that level or stage where we could afford, like any startup, you have to really be conscious of how much money you're spending in terms of off-the-shelf products to what you're building, because developers aren't cheap. Building a team out isn't cheap. That's what I mean. There was a lot of learnings there. I mean, when you're going into a market like Athens versus, in Greece versus Bangkok in Thailand, what you did in Thailand that was really, really good may not have worked in Athens in Greece. And I think my concept of, if we just had this standard operating procedure and a standard, research, and market analysis, we'll be okay. It doesn't really work that way when you're implementing things on the ground and going into the detail and training of employees. Like, the Thais are very different to the Greeks in terms of how they work, how they manage, labor law, for example. It's very difficult. So there was just a lot of learning.
Sorry to cut you off. So the first office in Thailand was for the customer support. You said 24-hour customer support.
Correct.
Why Thailand? Like, usually when companies open a customer support center in South Asia, they go to Philippines. So why did you choose Thailand?
Actually, we also headed up our technology. We were moving from Australian developers into the technology team in Thailand. So we did both customer support and technology at the same time. Back in those days, God, it's been a while now, maybe 8 years ago. I'm showing my age here. Thailand was very well known for sort of a startup hub at the time, and it was really rapidly growing. And so we looked into Vietnam, Philippines, and Thailand. And our CTO at the time, who happens to now also be my husband, we argued about this quite a bit, because I wanted to go to the Philippines because, my parents are from the Philippines. I knew it might have been more easier to go to the Philippines, but he was just like, trust me, there are really good developers here. One of, our travel company like What If and Agoda were already there. We had visited their offices because they were our suppliers. So it just made sense that it became this technology hub for us. It was actually the best decision that we made in terms of an executive team.
How big was the office in Thailand?
About 60, 70 staff.
And how many of them were developers and how many were customer support?
Probably 60% were developers, 20-30% was customer support, and the rest 10% was administration management.
And most people were
I didn't add up to
Thai.
100%. Wait, I don't know if I added it up.
That's right. We need to check those numbers.
Yeah.
So most people were from Thailand, or did you bring in international talent as well?
Majority, probably 99%, were from. I think there was only two foreigners there at the time. Yeah.
Okay,
Did that
so
include you and your husband?
No, we didn't base ourselves
Yeah.
there. We found a really good operations manager who reported directly into me, and he was Australian. He was living there, and then I think our next Farang or foreigner was British, and he was a developer, and he helped us train up the Thais and upskill the Thais.
okay, so that's one of the lessons there for the other companies is like, if you can find somebody who already lives in the market, like you kind of like reduce the risk, right? Like
Oh,
if
100%.
there's like an Australian guy who already has lived in Bangkok before, then like at least they know the culture, like they can adapt to the like environment. You already know that they will not go home because like the weather is too hot or whatever, right?
Oh,
So
look, I think you hit the nail on the head there. We found people that we absolutely trusted, and they came to our Australian head office for 3 months, really learning, understanding, and inculcating a lot of our value system and what we wanted and our vision. And they were then tasked with implementing it in the markets. We would then also come back to Thailand every 2 to 3 months and spend a few weeks to a month on in just really spending time with the teams, and that is critical to the success of any business, is just making sure if you do have a head office outside that there is presence, there's from the head office, because without that, I don't think they would have been able to open up to us or trusted us as outsiders. So having someone in-house makes a world of difference.
and in those 3 months that this like country manager or however you call this person like was back in Australia in the HQ, like what did they do? Like did they have like constant trainings, or they were doing already their job in Thailand from Australia, or like how did the 3 months look like?
It was very much spending time with other managers. The executive team, it was probably less so. In terms of, we would just go through budgets and visionary stuff, and execute some of our business plans and share our business plans. It was my job and task to make sure that the operations were running globally. So I would have daily stand-ups anyway with my teams globally, and ensure that a lot of the strategies and plans that we put in place were being worked on. But yeah, their time in Australia was very much just being with the company and other managers and other support staff, so that if I wasn't around or if someone else, they had a team of people that they knew that they could rely on and trust, and it was just building, I guess, that culture.
Yeah, that sounds like something I need to implement in my companies. Like it's always really hard when you're going to new markets and you hire somebody who is otherwise a brilliant person, but they don't have that organizational context, like they don't know any like of the key people personally. And while you can do some of those things online, like through like video calls and everything, it doesn't replace like that human connection, right?
Yeah,
Like
I think the
actually like
face to face
yeah.
is probably the thing that drives trust, credibility, connection, and collaboration. Where, like you say, when you're on Zoom and stuff, it works. But I mean, you can go for a drink afterwards, and then they kind of let their hair down and they tell you everything else, in person, that they wouldn't be able to say face to face. People and culture for me is number one. It's incredibly important, and if we can't afford for people to come to Australia all the time, then we would always go to Asia and all the other. It's just really important that the leadership team are present.
I can kind of relate to that because when I joined, Emerhub a while ago, a couple of months, after spending a couple of months working remotely, Lauri, you called me to Indonesia, and that was pretty much when, I realized what the company was doing. It wasn't just about, gelling with the people. It was an understanding of what's happening on a day to day. So, and since I had never been to Indonesia, I never really understood the culture of work that the people in our company were, following. So it was definitely eye opening. After that, it was just so much easier communicating with people. Even if we were doing it over email, we didn't need calls as such because we understood each other's tone and the way that they talked and the way that they thought. So Yeah, definitely. I think a physical, session every now and then is pretty
It's
good.
the
Yeah, I can
nuances,
tell.
it's the
I can.
day-to-day stuff, right?
Yeah,
It's the nuances of how
Right.
you
Yeah.
see them
exactly.
working and all of the, excuse the French, the shit fight that they have to go through. And you don't understand that because you're
Yes.
so
Yeah.
far removed from it. But when you're in the business, you get to see it firsthand and you go, oh my God, that's why you don't pick up my phone at the drop of a hat. you know?
Yeah,
And it's like that
I
you
can
get
tell you
some
exactly
emails.
when
Yeah.
I decided that okay, we have to bring Sohaib to South Asia because like his team was all based in Pakistan, and then like one day I received an article draft that they wanted to publish, and it was like relocating to Manila as a digital nomad, and I was like, the article was all about how it's like a tropical paradise and like everything like it. Nobody nobody who has been to Manila would think like that's like the number one place to backpack or like live there as a digital nomad. Like no, there are like plenty of great beaches and everything in the Philippines, but you don't go to Manila for that, right? So like okay, like those people
Yeah.
need to feel what South Asia is about and like where are the places where you go for a vacation and where are the places where you purely go for a job like and Manila is definitely not like a vacation spot. So that's when I was like okay, we have to bring
Yeah, I
Sohaib
think a
over.
breaking point was when we were creating social media content, and our designer was making like showing entrepreneurs in Bali wearing suits and stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
after I came back to Indonesia, he showed it to me, and I was like, dude, no one in Bali looks like that. So let's just not do that.
Yeah. So, Joanna, you are now director and founder of your own company. Are you still doing it together with your husband?
Yes, actually. Since moving to, or prior to moving to Thailand, we had created our own startup after the travel company, and we were wanting to create our own sort of tech stack and platform. But then we got an opportunity here in Thailand to move, and since then I've just sort of been doing a lot of consulting, doing helping startups and SMEs to grow and scale because I know how they've done it. I know what to do. So I guess it just evolved into that. We now have created a platform, an all-in-one platform solution that helps startups and SMEs to grow and scale. And we're about to launch it actually next year. So yeah, so we're doing that, and we're just about to. We went through that BOI process, so it was very, very difficult here in Thailand to go through a lot of that business registration and capital and financing and trying to work out how many Thai staff we need, all of this kind of stuff. So we're going through that process at the moment, and but yeah, yes, we are doing business here now.
Yeah. So you mentioned you are going through the BOI process. For listeners that don't know what BOI is, it's basically like
Board
a
of
investment
investment.
permit that yeah you can own like 100% of the company because you're like bringing new technology or like something very important to Thailand, right?
That's right. So
So
BOI stands for Board of Investment, and it's an incentive scheme for investors like us who want to invest into the country and the kingdom. Um, Essentially, if you go through the other route, which is just registering a business in Thailand, um, foreigners can't own 100%. They have, majority has to be owned by a Thai. We don't know any Thais that we can do, essentially trust with our business. So it's sort of like, they have to own, I think, 51% and you own 49%. But the BOI Board of Investment Scheme is 100% foreign ownership, and also I'm not sure if you're aware, but every time you hire a staff member who's a foreigner, in the first option, you have to put 2 million Thai baht capital for every foreigner you hire. It gets a bit costly when you want to grow and scale your business. So, but under the BOI scheme, you can hire as many foreigners as you want, as long as you can justify it, and as long as you can say to the to BOI that okay, we're also hiring at just as many, if not a lot more, Thais, and we're upskilling them. But we need people to train them up and things like that. So it's just a balancing act. But for us, really good tax incentives. Really, for foreigners, we used to get taxed like 56% in Australia. So
yeah.
having 15% tax, I'll pay my taxes to C's and I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an incentive to actually pay taxes because it's a
That's
reasonable
right.
amount. So how difficult is it to get a BOI license like for your industry? Because I'm guessing when you first go there and you say like we have like a consulting business, they would be like, oh, that's not really technology. So you had to convince them, right, that like the platform you're building is actually innovative and like you're bringing something new to the Thailand.
Yeah, look, it certainly hasn't been easy, and it's certainly incredibly challenging. It's not easy by any means, but it really it's really to advance the kingdom, and the middle class, and making sure that they're getting trained and upskilled. And there's a number of different industry groups that they want to focus on, and one of them is technology, digital innovation, obviously tourism, sustainable tourism, because a huge part of Thailand is tourism. And then I think there's something health and wellness or sustainability, something like that. There are many different kind of industry groups that they're focusing on. For a technology company that's wanting to create a platform, it's pretty easy in that sense, because all you have to do is really present that business plan, what the technology stack is, how you're going to build it, how many developers you might get. So everything around that is quite easy for us to justify. But I'm not a BOI expert. I think the best advice I can give is hire yourself a good accountant and a lawyer, or even Emma Hub. I'll leave all of, because I know that you guys do business registration in Asia. I mean, I always leave it to the experts. I do a lot of research myself, but when you're in country, it's really, really important that someone that knows what they're talking about, and you trust the experts, and you work with someone that you know and trust.
Yeah, thanks for the plug. Yeah, indeed, we we did expand to Thailand like a few months ago. So yeah, and the first thing we did was we hired somebody very experienced in Thailand, who is a Thai person, but like has spent most of their career working with like foreign companies. So it's like you don't really realize all those like smaller details or the fine prints in the law if you just like theoretically read like what's on like the government websites and everything. Like you need that like on the ground experience, and it takes a while to acquire that.
But Asia is a different beast as well. It's also who not really what it's who I mean, so I work with the Australian Thai Chamber of Commerce. I'm one of their board members and directors. And and I do a lot of networking, and you come across certain people, right? And you go, oh, you've done this BOI before, and you went through this person, and there's just nuances that you can master and learn only because and have spoken to someone who've done that, or who knows someone who knows someone. That is what Asia is all about. So I definitely think it's trying to build that network of support and of experts is really, really crucial.
What Thailand also is about, or I think everywhere in South Asia, is like everybody claims to know everyone as well. So like I've seen so many foreigners that like just go for a week, and then like they meet a few guys who claim that they know like the king or the president or whichever country they're at, and often those people are not actually who they claim to be, or like those connections are not as strong as they claim them to be. So how do you like kind of like differentiate like when you're networking with people like who are like what's the polite term, like full of
Bullshitting you?
yeah, and who are like legit?
Look, I think with anything in life, it's it's about trust, and if when you have a gut feeling that this doesn't seem right, or this person doesn't seem legit, or it's a little bit dodgy or something like that. I mean, I have my own value system, and my value system is trust and transparency. It's doing things equitably. I believe in karma, and I do not do bad business because I don't want bad karma to come back to me, right? So I always am very, very open and honest when I'm doing business dealings. In terms of your question about networking, I think really it's a hit or miss in Thailand. I mean, foreigners always get, I wouldn't say, what's that saying, the wool put over our eyes? There is always going to be that. I don't think it's just Thailand. I think it's not just Asia, it's everywhere you go. I mean, there's scams right now, like those Nigerian scams and those, hey, I'm selling a domain, there's scams everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think you've just got to be smart. You've got to do some research. And this is like what investing is. We do a lot of investments, and you've got to do your research, and sometimes it's a risk. You might not know everything 100%, and you take that risk, and you're willing to lose some money because you've taken that risk, or you go and say, okay, not doing it because it doesn't feel right, but that's calculated decision making. It's strategic, and that's what I say to anyone investing in Thailand or Asia or anywhere, is just really go in with your eyes wide open, ask the right questions. When you're meeting someone new in networking, don't just go off the first conversation. Meet them once, twice, 3, 4, 5 times. Meet some of their networks, meet some of their connections, because I've heard awful stories where they've gone and given someone a whole heap of money and never seen that person again. So go meet their mum, go meet their dad, go meet, their best friend, whatever it is that makes you feel like you can trust this person, and you know everything about them. Do that, but don't go in blind, is my advice.
Yeah, I think common sense is like very underrated somehow among
Yeah.
foreigners who are otherwise very reasonable people, but somehow they get like blinded by all the opportunities or people they meet in South Asia. So I think
They
like
get taken advantage
I
of.
think the rule of thumb for me is like if something sounds like too good to be true, it probably is. So like just like be a little bit careful, especially in the beginning when you're new and you are going to make those rookie mistakes. But like try not to spend all your money doing that.
Yeah, I think you can't put all your eggs in one basket. It's probably the best advice.
Yeah.
So I was wondering a bit about the the workforce of Thailand, because you mentioned in your previous startup, you had 99% of your people were from Thailand, and of course when you chose those people you must have compared them to skill sets and costs between Australia and Thailand. But then you also mentioned that you had a foreigner who you had to bring in to upskill the team. So does that mean that Thailand is great for a junior or mid junior level resource and not for a senior level resource? If someone's coming to Thailand, should they bring like managers from outside and have locals do the lower managerial stuff?
That's a good assessment. There are some great senior leaders and business leaders and managers here in Thailand, but they're few and far between. And generally speaking, they go overseas. They get bigger money in
Makes
America.
sense. Yeah.
So you're right in saying that's sort of my assessment as well. Yeah, so I would agree that junior and mid, you can train up. They're so trainable. They're so coachable. Senior people, it's very difficult to get them. Every single company wants them. It's hard. But I'm not saying they aren't out there, because they are. We had some really
So
good
I'll
developers who
yeah.
were managers, and were like mid developers, and then we turned them into a manager because it was so good. So I think it's just about making sure that you're looking for someone that's fit for purpose for your business and organization, and fit for purpose is different for everybody.
Yeah, so I kind of put a positive spin to it. So even if you have a lot of mid-level or junior level resources, that's probably a good thing as well. But then what's driving these people? Because if I compare this to Pakistan, so here we have a lot of developers in Pakistan, and that's because as a general the general country, the general populace is very tech savvy. We have good universities. We have a very hard working kind of attitude towards work and with loyalty. So there are a couple of traits that Pakistani people have that make them really good junior to mid level developers. What are some of the traits that you found in the Thai workforce that made them better, than any or some other countries?
um from personal experience, I mean, I'll talk just specifically for like you're talking about development teams. We had experience with some developers in Vietnam, a lot of our developers in Thailand, and we have some in the Philippines. um, the Filipinos, great communication, outstanding
Yeah.
communication, but somewhat not as hungry as the Vietnamese. The Vietnamese developers, poor communicators, but incredibly hungry. And Thais, from experience, sat in the middle, depending on, like, maybe they weren't great communicators, but they're really good developers and coders. Or like, they were just really, really hungry to learn, or whatever it might be, but they're just communication. So, but then you had some really good Thais who can communicate really, really well, but, it might be a little bit like, oh, I know everything, and weren't so coachable and trainable, because their parents were very well off, for example, so those kind of kids, they come from, rich families, and they don't want to work hard because they know that they've got a safety net or a cushion to fall onto. So again, it really just is determined on your culture that you set, and your vision, and what you're looking for in terms of skill sets and traits of people. For me, we were looking for people who are hungry, loved the entrepreneurial dynamic of the business. It was fast paced. Not everyone can keep up with a fast paced environment. You have to have thick skin. You have to be able to work quite rapidly, because we were creating and developing technology quite fast. And then on top of that, we were also servicing clients. So you almost had to have that entrepreneurial spirit, and that comes down to your recruitment. And having an entrepreneurial spirit, nobody has. And entrepreneurial spirit meaning, do they question things? Do they challenge the status quo? Do they go, well, I think I can find a better way? Do they make mistakes and learn from it? And that for me is crucial. So I don't interview someone and look at their CV and go, okay, they've got this experience, they've got this. I look at behavioral traits. I ask behavioral questions. And we go out for coffee. I do walks. I do meeting walks, and I walk with them, and they're really relaxed, and they tell you everything. And those are the kind of behaviors that I'm looking for. I'm looking for someone who, will, put their cup away when they go into an interview, or they will ask you first, oh, you eat, and you can see how polite they are. I look at all those kind of traits, because everything else I think is trainable and teachable.
Yeah, you mentioned something interesting before, like about like employees coming from like very wealthy families, and I think that's pretty universal across emerging markets, not even only exclusively in Asia. It's like it might sound like a good idea to hire somebody from wealthy families because like they're well connected and they went to good universities, but based on my experience, like if I hire somebody who earns like, I don't know, $600 a month, and then they show up to office wearing Gucci shoes, like they don't really need this job. Like they don't have that hunger, and most likely they're not going to like push really hard to go out, like to like get a career in your company, or like to get to the like next level.
Yeah.
Like they don't really need this job. Like I like to hire people who really need to get their next paycheck, like like who have mortgage, who have to put their kids to private school, like that, like the people who complain that like, why was my salary like 4 hours late this month, like these are like the people you want, because like these are the people who really need this job, and they will have like that extra motivation. Like as a coach, maybe that sounds a bit cruel to you, or what's your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's everybody's different. Everybody has a story. We have this thing in Inspiring Women in Travel Asia, where every journey has a story, So I like to get to know people better, and maybe that rich kid wants to go out and branch themselves out on their own, because I've had that before, and when I understand their story and I understand their motivations and what inspires them, I think business leaders, we've got a job, you should be grateful, and particularly now with the new generation. I know they're called Gen Z, I'm not sure what they're called anymore. But
They're Zoomers now.
yeah, I hear a lot from the boomers or the Generation X. They go, oh, they don't work hard enough. And, I'm from that same, generation where we had to work our way up. And, I would run around getting coffees and, do anything and everything. Right. Nowadays, they're like, oh, no, you need to pay me, 100,000 salary. And, I need to be this title. And I guess it's the entitlement of this generation. Right. But when you sit down with them And I often, I do a lot of mentoring, and I've created another community hub called Next Gen. It's called Next Generation, for young professionals, young entrepreneurs, and those young at heart in Thailand, through OzChamp. And when you speak to the next generation, and when you truly hear and listen and understand what they want the same things as us. The way they go about it is very, very different. So leaders nowadays need to understand that it's not just about, I'm giving you a job, you should be grateful. It should be, okay, what's your skill set? What inspires you? What are you motivated by? Why do you want this job? Like, and if they're bored, or, and having those regular check-ins and catch-ups, I think is really, really important, because we as business leaders, and particularly business owners, we think we know everything, and we don't. I find that I learn a lot more from the younger generation, like my kids, for example, and how to use TikTok and all that kind of thing. I mean, they're so savvy, and I think it goes both ways. They need to listen to the older generation, and we need to listen to the younger generation, and really find that middle ground as to how do we work well together, how do we communicate, because they communicate really differently. They're very short and sharp and entitled and want everything now, whereas we want all of the data and the facts before us before making a decision. So how do we meet in the middle? And I think communication goes a long way. Sitting down, talking, understanding one another, and yeah, that's my perspective.
So I guess
As an
those are
Australian,
yeah. Go ahead.
As an Australian, how do you have to or do you have to adapt to the way you communicate with the Thais? Because my experience with Australians is they're fun, easygoing, but also very loud, which can be kind of scary for South Asians sometimes. How did you adapt your kind of way of communicating with the team?
Well, look, I'm incredibly loud, particularly when I'm in a networking event. And I mean, I've got a kind of two sides to me. I'm actually an introvert by nature. I love coming home and recharging and re-energizing by myself at home. But when I'm out there, I do like to talk to people. I'm very curious about people. I'm very empathetic. So for me, I mean, I've become more Asian, if I'm being very, very honest. And my husband says I'm sounding a lot more Asian than Aussie. And I guess it's just been a lot of fun getting to talk to the Thais, getting to understand them. I remember, I am one of the directors for a digital marketing company here called Move Ahead Media. And subsequently, for a period of time, for 2 years, I think I was their COO. And so, because I'm helping them to grow and scale their business. And, I found it incredibly difficult, because when I first got here, I expanded the business. I handpicked those staff, right? But then coming into a new organization, a new business, and I did not handpick this staff, it was a bit of an eye-opener. It was, it was really getting to know the staff and getting them to trust me. So the best way I can explain it is, again, going back to what I said earlier, is just sitting down with them, having a meal. Asians love karaoke and food,
Yeah.
And I think if you can kind of, play on those two things, like you're eating and they're just very relaxed, they open up to you and just listen. And then the other thing is, it's just they like really good leaders. And whether you're loud or boisterous or quiet, they like people, because I'm quite direct. So a lot of the times in the beginning, the Thais would be like, oh my gosh, she's telling us off, or whatever. And I would say to them, no. And in Asia, in particular, not just Thailand, they have this thing where they want to save face. They don't want to tell you no, or they don't want to tell you, Joanna, you're wrong, or you've made a mistake. So the first thing that I do is, guys, nobody's in trouble. What I want is really an open forum for you to give me feedback, because I need to learn, what makes you tick, or what we did right or what we did wrong. And sometimes they won't say it openly in a meeting with all of their friends. So follow up with a, hey, did you get what I mean? You feel free to, come out for a coffee, or let's, send me an email, because I might want to do it on a one-on-one basis. So really understanding again those nuances of the different types of cultures that you're walking into. And that Asian culture is, they want to save face, they don't want to embarrass you, they don't want to tell you you're wrong. And I think that comes from our parents, in our generation, where we just had to sit quietly and listen and not tell them. So yeah, I think you just have to get around that by having those one-on-one sessions, by showing them and teaching them that nobody's in trouble, mistakes, an opportunity to learn and grow. This is an opportunity for us to communicate and collaborate, and again share the Western world with the Asian world, and it goes both ways.
Yeah, that's been one of my lessons in South Asia as well, and I'm still making this mistake of like assuming that like most people are motivated by like getting like responsibility and autonomy in their work, because that's what I would want when I if I join the company. But like what I've found like time and time and again is like actually most fresh graduates, when you hire them, like what you said, like they like strong leadership, like they want to have a manager that is like teaching them
They
everything,
want to be
holding
told
their
what to
hand
do.
every day. Exactly, yeah. and,
Mm.
and for me that would be like incredibly like demotivating. Like I would want to be like trusted and like figure out things on
Empowered.
my own, but
Yeah.
yeah, empowered. But that's not what majority of people want here. So I think like if you want to build like a bigger team where people stay for a bit longer and make a career, you have to have that like middle management, team leaders levels like very well set up.
Oh, 100%. It's like you have to set up these hierarchy almost. Like, I love
Yeah.
open places and communication and collaboration. But I guess here in Thailand, they do want someone in between, because they're like, oh, I'm not going to tell the big boss, or the director. So you've got to put in place a place where they can go to and feel comfortable, and that's just the way that they're wired, really.
Yeah, and like I've been doing MRHub for like 13 years now, I believe. So like I it's very difficult for me to get to know like the entry levels or even the middle management. Like they're frankly afraid to talk to me. I don't know if it's my personality or like it's very difficult to have like a like an open, honest conversation with people. They will just tell you what they think you want to hear. But like if you actually want to know what's going on, you have to kind of like go through those layers and
But don't
like
also
respect
forget
the
there's
hierarchy.
English is their second language, so they may not feel comfortable speaking to you in English, and they don't know how to translate that. And I found that over the years with the Thais, majority of the time they stayed quiet, was because they were too embarrassed to articulate or communicate what they really felt, because they didn't want to get it wrong. So having like someone like a Thai, or there to communicate and translate something that they want to say, is really, really vitally important. That's kind of why you need someone in Thailand, in country, to really translate some of those things, because it's really important that they feel comfortable communicating in their own language, because it can get lost in translation.
I think it's more of a, there are two factors, I guess, to this, because being in this region, I kind of understand why an entry level person would have trouble communicating with like the CEO or a director. I think there's two factors. One being that, the respect element that Joanna, you spoke about as well. It's something that's so deeply ingrained in us
Mm.
from early childhood, that you do not speak to your elders or someone who you report to. You just do not say anything that disagrees with
Talk
them. So
back. Not let it
there's
talk
that cultural element, of course.
back.
And then you very rightfully mentioned, people can communicate, but they're so embarrassed by their language skills. And I found that like 7 times out of 10, someone might have really great communication skills, but they're just afraid of communicating in English, because there's such a there's such a note attached to speaking English correctly in this region, that, oh, that guy can't even communicate 2 words in English, and that's so embarrassing. And it's been like it's just how people are demotivated. So I guess first, on one step, they just don't want to give an opinion that's different from their seniors because of culture. And then even when they want to, they're like, all right, if I mess up like one pronunciation or I make a grammatical mistake, that's going to be super embarrassing and they're going to laugh at me. That's the way things are here. We laugh at each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this shouldn't be confused with like if people don't say anything bad to you that like they don't have those feelings. Like they will
Yes,
just not tell it
exactly.
to your face. They will tell it to this like employee WhatsApp group where the boss is not included, right? So
Yeah, and
people,
that blows
yeah,
up 6 months later, right? When that employee leaves out of the blue and you're left wondering, what just happened? This guy, I thought he was doing a great job, but he just never communicated with me. But that was just building up inside them.
Yeah, and that's why I have a employee engagement tool, what we use, and technology is such a enabler. Where you're constantly what we call pulse surveys, keeping your finger on the pulse, and understanding. And it's literally, 3 questions. How are you feeling today? And it's like a smiley face, a sad face, a angry face, and it's just every day. It's a gamification. They're going in there and they're telling you how they feel. And then, is there anything that happened yesterday that you wanted to tell, that you couldn't tell your manager? And getting all that data and information is really critical, particularly for foreigners where you don't have finger on the pulse, because you're right, they're going to go into their WhatsApp chat and start talking behind our backs. But if you have this employee engagement tool, it enables you to really look at the data, critical data, and look at the reds and go, wow, that department, there's something wrong here. What's the manager doing or not doing? And that for me is vital in any organization, having those constant, what I call pulse, checks, and system checks, people checks, is really, really important. And they won't tell you to their face, but let me tell you, they'll do it through a game.
how do you do it? Like, it's also maybe a good time to you can tell us more about your platform. Like we just do like simple employee engagement surveys, which are like a simple Google form we send every quarter to the employees. And what I see there is like you are 80% of the responses are going to be like really positive, except for like the salary question. Everybody thinks that their salary should be higher, but but other than that, like the only people who really give you any negative feedback are like the people who are already like leaving, like who probably submitted their resignation or will submit it the moment they will get accepted to a new job. So like how do you get this like honest feedback? Is it like anonymous surveys, or like how do you get people to speak up?
It is anonymous. You can kind of figure out by which department they might be, but and if they've said something specific, obviously something happened yesterday, and that the only person that happened to was this person, right? But it is anonymous. In terms of the employee engagement tool, there is a company here in Thailand I partner with. He's amazing, and I'm actually going. We're actually wanting to get his platform, or his app, his employee engagement app, into our platform, because we wanted to do all an end-to-end platform. But I've used it on a number of companies now, and it's great. And what they do is essentially it's psychology-based questions. So they might ask you one question one day and a similar question the next day, and it formulates behavioral-based questioning, that kind of stuff. It's not always the same. It might be a different version of the same question. So it kind of catches out people where you see if they're telling the truth or not, right? And what it does is it does it in the morning, and then afternoon it also pings you and say, hey, how you feeling? Having a good morning? And you can see between the time if something happened. For me, I use it as a leadership tool, particularly with my leaders and my foreign leaders, and I say, okay, well, why is this department going down? And you can see, the trend lines. I find that incredibly, informative. You can see when it's busy season, the trend lines generally go down, and everybody's stressed and working to the bone. And it's quite hilarious because it actually matches sometimes the revenue, right? But employee engagement is about having your finger on the pulse and understanding that that team or that department or that leader is good, or on shaky grounds, and you can do something about it because you can see that they're stressed and overworked, and it helps you inform your decision making, right? And goes, okay, well, I definitely need to get more people because 90% of that team have said they're unhappy because they're stressed, for example, right? So it's more objective data gathering and finding, rather than asking specific questions on a pulse survey. Almost, it's a gamification. It's constantly asking you different kinds of questions, and they're doing the different smiley faces, and then there's specific other questions, and who in your team would you recognize and why. Did you do something today that you're proud of that nobody else knows? And those kind of questionings, they have to start thinking about it and go, oh yeah, I did this and I didn't get recognition for it.
Yeah.
And that forms, and it helps me to manage my leaders and performance manage them, helps me to lead them, and likewise it helps them to lead me better, and saying, hey, look, 90% of my employees unhappy because they're all stressed. You need to approve my extra 2-3 people that I want. And that is an objective, and it is something that isn't subjective, that they're all pretending to be stressed. I can see from the data that they're all stressed. um,
And is the app telling you that like, oh, you should look into like this area because it seems like lots of people are struggling with like workload, or I don't know. As a manager, do you get insight like one of your like team leaders is like a jerk and you should
Yeah.
nobody likes
There's
him or her?
insights in there that says, this person has got a X% chance of leaving. They're at risk and they're in red, because of this and that, and because it gathers it, and you can look back and see the daily trends, you can see the weekly trends, you can see the monthly, quarterly trends. And I use this to formulate my business plans every quarter. I don't have an annual one, but I do it in bite-sized pieces, for all my businesses, because it's important for me to be agile and know that there are always going to be things that a spanner in the works gets thrown my way, and for me, I love it. I love anything to do with data because it's objective decision making. My value system is trust and transparency. If you can get into a situation where your leadership team, you're constantly looking at data and it's not personal, that for me is the ticket to growing and scaling a business.
And have you quantified kind of like what's the value of doing this? Like, let's say like I use this application and my employee retention rate improves by, I don't know, 15%. Like how much money does it save for my company?
Well, how much does it cost to lose a really, really good employee, to do recruitment, to train, and then you've got the managers training, and then you've got the on the job the training, and then you've got payouts and all of this kind of stuff. The cost of losing a really good employee, or any employee for that matter, is more expensive than retaining one. Because if you go out into the market, it's probably going to cost you twice as much. It's statistically proven that it's more, retaining employees is far more cost effective than it is to lose one, because there's a lot more associated costs with job boards and hiring, and the amount that it takes you 4 weeks times by a recruiter's salary to recruit that person, plus the training of another 4 weeks. I mean, you've already lost out on 3 months of valuable
Yeah,
time.
and it takes time for people to get good at their job as well, right? So maybe it
Correct.
takes like
6
3,
months.
4,
Let's say
6
6
months.
months.
Yeah,
You've lost 6
yeah,
months. There you go.
exactly. Yeah.
So before we move to a conclusion, I can see that the culture and human element of it, we've taken a pretty deep dive into it. But let's go back a bit to your experience as an investor in Thailand, right? Because we have a large segment of our audience who would wish to invest in Thailand, either through their own businesses or by investing in other businesses. But so as an investor, what are some of the industries or some of the areas of work that you're seeing that could benefit, that a foreign investor or an entrepreneur can invest in, and not necessarily the sustainable tourism stuff that the government is promoting anyway, but from your experience, what are some of the sectors that are booming?
Okay, for transparency's sake, the everyday investments, usually handled by my husband. So he does a lot of the stuff like on the market, stock markets, blockchain, crypto, all that kind of stuff he does, for our nest egg. For me, I like investing in businesses, and growing and scaling startups and small to medium-sized companies. The ones that I look for, look, Thailand is known and has a reputation for import, export, industrial, sectors, for example, right? For me, where I see Thailand growing is in particular in the services industry. Technology, e-commerce, again, sustainable tourism, because that's where they should be focusing on things like environmental, sustainability initiatives. The services sector doesn't get enough, and this is one of the things that I'd like to advocate as part of a board member, Australian Thai Chamber of Commerce. One of the things that I do want to advocate for is the SME space and the startup space, where we're looking at services. We're getting more funding, whether it's from Australia and Thailand, on the services sector, because there's not enough of that. I don't see it, and that is where my key investments are going, certainly in technology. I mean, you look what happened with COVID. There was so many innovative new companies coming up. I mean, there was a lot going down, and a lot shutting their doors. The brick and mortar, travel agencies were shutting down, for example. But we saw a rise in online learning, in online courses and e-commerce and all that kind of stuff. So I do think the services sector, whatever sector within the services industry, we love investing in technology. We love investing in technology companies, in up and coming technologies, that kind of stuff. And, I think foreign investors, I think.
So I'll make it a little more interesting. So I'll ask Lauri's favorite question. So imagine that you haven't been to Thailand and you're just fresh off the boat. You have $200,000 and you want to start a business today in Thailand. What would you do?
I'd invest in my company, an all-in-one platform solution. No.
Oh, you don't know about yourself yet.
Again, technology, digital transformation. Asia in itself is behind 5-10 years in some Western world. There are so many things that we could do here that's ripe for the taking in terms of opportunities and investments here in Thailand, particularly Indonesia in digital. I know the digital. I helped grow and scale a digital media company and digital advertising company, and one of those was in Indonesia. So I think Asia as a whole is still a little bit behind in technology. Infrastructure they have really well, but I think in terms of technology stack, in terms of upskilling the people within technology, I think that's probably the key. And I'm biased because that's where I would certainly, and I am investing in.
So for you, it'll be the service industry,
Service
right?
industry, yeah. E-commerce.
But would you be serving, local clients, or would you be serving international clients with talent from Thailand?
Both. I mean, look, there's a huge market here in Thailand. Like, there are so many businesses here in Thailand, and I personally, I mean, our strategy is to take the Thailand market because there are so many companies that I speak to on an everyday basis through the Australian Thai Chamber of Commerce who are in my network that need help with digital transformation. They don't have the expertise with technology. They don't have huge funds with technology, but they can see that they want to invest in it. They just don't know how. So I think that there's a lot of Thai companies here that would love, a company to help them out here in terms of digital transformation, digital online marketing, technology stack, that kind of stuff, to make their world easier, whether it's customer service, whether it's whatever it is in the services industry. I think they need help.
I had a very short-lived career as an angel investor after I sold one of my companies in 2015 to an Australian company, actually. And after that, I was like, okay, now I have some funds and I should become an angel investor. And I, I, I started like talking to different startups, and like what I realized back then was like everyone who had like a simple idea thought like their idea is worth like millions of dollars. And I really struggled with it. Like, how, like you haven't really done anything yet. How is it so expensive? And I made, I think, like one or two investments, and then I decided like that's not for me. I'm like better off like using that 200,000 to start like another company myself and find a co-founder or something. But like I really wasn't cut out for being an investor. So like how do you deal with it? Like how do you find like good deals in Asia?
You got to manage your risk. I think I said this earlier. It's just about managing risk. For me personally, it's incredibly difficult. we have a number of different methodologies to it as well, where we can go in and we can help the business grow and scale, and we just take a cut, right? So it's you kind of low risk, because it's really just your time in building the technology. For example, we become their technology partner, and they're powered by Simple Scalable Solutions as an example, right? And that is kind of low for us. It's like, it's just our time, and, we put in a little bit, and that's about it. And we can help them. We sit on the board and we advise them, and we help them, we build their technology, and we go through that whole entire process. So you're kind of arm's length, but you're sort of in the business as well. The other thing is a pure investment, is like you just put money in cash. I've never really been that type of person. I think time, expertise is more valuable than just pure hard cash, because, and I don't mean to offend a whole heap of your listeners out there who are, a lot of people just go, here, have some cash, and business owners go, okay, yeah, I'm going to do this. But they don't also know how to do it. There's not really anyone teaching them, showing them the way. Like I failed many times, and I'm sure other people have failed many times. And those are the kind of people that you go, okay, don't do that. So I'm a little bit more cautious. My husband does everything else, but I'm a little bit more cautious with risk taking and just giving people straight up money. It's kind of like, okay, you get money plus time, or time plus this. And I think that is a better strategy for me when I'm going into organizations and saying, well, how much do you want for that? Or how much do you need to grow and scale your business? Because they'll say, like you said, I want millions of dollars, or I want X amount to do this. And you give it to them, and then you have your board meeting, or you have, a report, and say, okay, what did you do with my money? And they go, well, we spent it. And for me, I've always been bitten in that route, like yourself. And I just don't do that anymore. I end up being very, very careful as to who I partner with, the kind of business partners I want to be business partners with. So that partnership is the first step. It's like a dating almost, like you're going into bed with these people long term. So it's not like, let's swipe left and give that person my money. It's, hey, what are your values? How do you spend money? How do you treat your people? How do you treat your customers? And if I start getting a sense that, they don't treat their customers very well, or they don't treat their people very well, or even their family, I get a little bit of a red flag syndrome. And I look at the owners, and I look at who are going to be my business partners, and what are they going to do with my money? Can I trust them? So it's more of a partnership for me rather than just cold hard cash. Did that answer your question? Sorry, was that a bit too?
Yeah, yeah. I know. I was just waiting for Sohaib to ask the closing question. So I think we're hitting the hour mark.
Yeah, I think we're a little bit over time, but I honestly feel like we can have another hour talking to Joanna, because your perspective on not just the technical side of investing in Thailand, but especially on the people element and the culture of Thailand has it's pretty insightful. So Lauri, do you have any closing questions?
Yeah, Joanna, maybe you can tell us like where our listeners can find out more about you. Like, are you active on social, or like some website they should visit?
I'm terrible at social media. I know I should be posting some stuff on LinkedIn. I don't even touch Facebook. I am on Instagram, but probably not the best place to find me there either. Look, the best place, I am a board member for Australian Thai Chamber of Commerce, so they can certainly go to the AusChamp Thailand website. They can obviously look me up on LinkedIn. My company is called simplescalablesolutions.com, so they can go there as well. But or through you guys.
Awesome.
Perfect. Sounds good. Awesome. So again, thank you so much, Joanna, for being on the Emerge podcast. It was a pleasure having you. And I can already see that we're going to have a follow-up episode with Joanna, Lauri, right? Because I still have like 5 questions in my head, but we're a little over time.
We need to have you back like in 6 months, and then we'll ask all the other questions that we.
Well, Lauri, I dare you to come to Thailand, and then we can kind of show you some of the sites in Thailand, and we'll go out with.
Oh, we're both there in a week.
I'm there on Monday, so
Oh, are
careful
you?
there.
Maybe we should.
I might show up in your office on Tuesday morning for coffee.
Let's do it. Just email me. By the way, guys, none of those questions that you asked me were on this sheet that you asked me. But anyways,
I told you it was going to be super candid, right? Yeah, but again, it was very insightful, and I'm 100% sure that anyone who's considering investing into Thailand would love to listen to what you've said, not just again on the technical side, but the cultural element, because of course there is a difference of what drives the Thai people and how you live with them and excel with them. So again, thank you so much,
you're
Joanna, for
welcome. Thank you
being with
so
us, and
much, guys,
Lauri,
for your time. I really
always a pleasure,
appreciate it.
Lauri.
And we'll see you next week for a coffee, hopefully.
All right, let's
Perfect.
do
All right.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
While the world's still asleep, we're already grinding. Walking foreign streets, big city lights so blinding. Learning and hustling in this relentless game. The emerge pods next up, we're breaking the frame. Yeah. While the world's still asleep, we're breaking the frame. We already grinding. The emerge pods next up, we're breaking the frame. Big city lights, woo, so blinding. Check it out. Okay. Yeah. Let's go. Let's get it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.